All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Baker Diversity Lecture Series. My name is Nicole Cook. I am the Augusta Baker Endowed Chair at the University of South Carolina, and this is our annual Spring Diversity Series. And in fact, this is the last of our series for this season. And we're very grateful to have Bill Campbell here with us. And I'm going to read his bio really quickly. Before I read his bio, just a little housekeeping. We are recording the session, and the session recording will be sent out to all registrants. It will also be posted to our website, so no worries about that. And please feel free to share this recording and any of the other recordings on our page with your friends and your network. We ask that you keep your microphones muted during Bill's presentation, but please feel free to ask questions and interact in the chat box. And at the end of Bill's presentation, you'll have an opportunity to ask him questions. All right, so let's get started. And first, let me start by thanking Bill for joining us today. We're chatting a little earlier, getting over the flu. It is that time of the year, so we're grateful that you're well enough and able to join us today. So Bill Campbell is the author of Sunshine Patriots, My Booty novel, and the anti-racism satire Coontown Killing Caper. Along with Edward Austin Hall, he co-edited the groundbreaking anthology Mothership, Tales from Afrofuturism and Beyond. He also co-edited Stories for Chip, a tribute to Samuel R. Delany with Nisi Shaw, Future Fiction, New Dimensions in International Science Fiction and Fantasy, and APB, Artists Against Police Brutality, with Jason Rodriguez and John Jennings. His Afrofuturist spaceploitation graphic novel, Bad Mothers, was released in 2019. His historical graphic novel, The Day the Klan Came to Town, was released in 2021. Campbell lives in Washington, D.C., where he spends time with his family and helms Rosarium Publishing. All right, welcome so much, Bill. So Bill, if you get started, I will get your slides up.
Okay, thanks for having me. I guess I'm here to tell you the story of my life and Rosarium Publishing. So I'm originally from Pittsburgh. I'm the son of a Jamaican immigrant and a coal miner's daughter from Western PA. I got the writing bug really, really early when I was 9 years old. My mother used to be in charge of making corporate films for Westinghouse. It was sort of buy our circuit breakers and nuclear arms kind of thing. And one day for 2 weeks, she pulled me out of school when I was in 4th grade and took me to Hollywood to let me see how the sausage was made. And I just kind of fell in love with the whole Hollywood mystique and stuff. But instead of wanting to be in movies, I decided that I wanted to write novels. I don't know exactly how that turned or how that worked, but that's what happened. Excuse me. From there, I just started writing from the time I was 9, and in college, I was introduced to Octavia Butler and Samuel R. Delany, and I just knew I wanted to be a science fiction writer. Octavia Butler because she was talking about things that I was interested in, and Samuel R. Delany because I just saw a man who was smarter than I would ever be, and I just wanted to do what he did. And then, yeah, so from my 20s on, I was writing, reading, as they tell every aspiring writer to do. I was submitting short stories. I got really lucky and was published in a couple of fanzines when I was in my early 20s. And then as I started to mature, and my taste started to refine and I was struggling for my voice and stuff, I just couldn't get published again. So I ended up writing my first novel, Sunshine Patriots, when I was 28. And yet again, there were just no buyers. Nobody was interested in what I was doing. Of course, I was disheartened. I started to be a music critic. I started a little music trade publication focused on independent music. I pretty much gave up writing. In fact, at one point, because I had Hollywood friends, I did dabble in screenplays as every probably struggling writer does. And there was no interest there either. So I started to just believe that I was absolutely horrible. And at one point in 2002, I pretty much threw away everything that I had written except for the novel. And then around 2003 or so, people were convincing me that there was this thing called print on demand that you could self-publish, and that maybe I should do that. And I said that, my first novel at that time, if it had been a child, it would be entering kindergarten, so why not try it? So I'm a firm believer of, if you're going to be a bear, be a grizzly. So in self-publishing, I sent out all these arcs, like I guess there's supposed to be like 300 advanced reader copies. I probably printed like 100 or so, sent those all out to media reviews. I organized a 20-city tour for myself. And in 2004, I hit the road. The thing about Sunshine Patriots is that it's an anti-war military SF book. And in 2004, if you remember, everybody was still pretty gung-ho about the Gulf War. So going around the country with an anti-war novel just really wasn't the ideal situation, let alone being a self-published author. So the tour was pretty disastrous, even though I had fun hanging out with friends in 20 different cities and seeing the country. But when people would ask me what the book was about, in a lot of places, I just really didn't want to tell them, because I didn't really want to have an argument and be called anti-American and all that stuff. And I would just point people to, at the time, the Da Vinci Code. So when I got back, I kind of enjoyed writing again. And it was such a disastrous tour that I decided to make fun of it. So that's how my booty novel was born. That one is about a failing science fiction writer who's being told to write a booty novel and refuses, but meanwhile he's writing a blog about his dating experiences. So while he's refusing to write a booty novel, he is writing a booty novel. And with that, I got a fancy smancy New York agent, and I thought, oh, things are looking up, this will be my chance to finally crack into the mainstream, and maybe one day I'll be a successful writer. And I was horribly wrong. he couldn't sell the thing to save his life. And at one point, excuse me one second. At one point in one of our many conversations, he told me I wasn't ghetto enough. This was the time around Ghetto Lit, but even still, it was one of those things where you're just like, white writers are never told that they're not Appalachian enough. They're never told that there's not an authentic San Diego feel to their writing. These are things that they never have to deal with. And, as I said, I'm the son of a Jamaican immigrant and a coal miner's daughter. I was born and raised in the suburbs. There's just an accident of birth. I'm not from the ghetto. It's not anything to be proud of or ashamed of. It just is what it is. And I didn't really feel that, out of respect, that I would write anything about that, because it's just simply not my experience. But it left me with this conundrum, because it left me with nothing to write, because people weren't really interested in my speculative fiction, because I was being told that there was no market for it, that Black people didn't read science fiction, that people weren't interested in reading Black people writing science fiction, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then I was told my real life experiences weren't legitimately Black. So I was struggling forever, for a very long time, with what to write. Meanwhile, my sleep was like those old 70s sitcoms where, you're tossing and turning and all you'd hear is like, you're not ghetto enough, you're not ghetto enough, you're not ghetto enough. And I just wake up in a cold sweat, just wondering, like, what in the world will I do? Because spent all this time wanting to be a writer, yet there was nothing for me to write. And then during that time, because I'm a nerd and my brother-in-law is a professor of education, I'm reading all these different things, all these different statistics about Black life, and then I'm comparing them to how we're often portrayed. So like the ghetto thing was like, the shelves were full of urban fiction, ghetto lit, or what a street lit, whatever it was called at the time. Um, but the majority of Black folks didn't even live in majority minority neighborhoods at the time, let alone ghettos. And then there were things with like drugs and criminality and all this stuff. And there was just this huge fundamental disconnect um, with the common narrative of Black life in America, and then just the disparate experiences of Black lives in America. And to the point where you kind of almost start thinking like how we're portrayed as almost science fiction, or probably more realistically like horror fiction. And it kind of came to me that I started realizing that like, well, there's a reason for this disconnect, and and the power of these narratives, and the person, he who controls the narrative has all the power, because because whatever they can say, if people are able to say anything about you, they're able to do anything to you, right? They can say that you don't experience pain, so it's okay to whip you. They can say that, our bringing you here civilizes you, so it's okay to enslave you. They can say the savages don't understand the value of land, so they can take it from you. It just goes on and on and on. You can say you do horrible things under liquor, or any miscellaneous drug, or they can just say, if you want to imprison you, that you're just inherently criminal, or to fast forward, a super predator. And I was just thinking about all of the powerful and political uses that these different narratives that distort life actually distort your own, not just how you're perceived, but actually distort how you have to roll through and navigate the country that we live in. And then that's how Coontown Killing Caper was born. I just wanted to say that, okay, if I'm not ghetto enough, then I'm going to give you what the ghetto is, that I'm going to give you all the different things that you say about Black life and put it in a book. And if you find it grotesque, and if you find it offensive, there's probably a reason for that, because you've never had it distilled in this fashion, that the things that you find normal may actually be grotesque. So while it was fun to write and it was great to get all that out, when my agent got the book, yeah, needless to say, I lost my agent. So so I ended up just self-publishing that as well. So I lost my fancy smancy agent and I was self-publishing, and I was going throughout the country, much even to a greater degree than I did before. I did like 50 some odd events that year, and I teamed up with these DC rappers, and we had an original soundtrack, and we were going all kinds of different places with it, just kind of having fun with it. And a funny thing kind of happened while we were doing, selling these things out of the back of a car, and going to craft fairs and comic book conventions and all that stuff, was that two of my books entered academia. So the first book, Sunshine Patriots, there was a grad student in West Virginia writing part of his PhD dissertation on Sunshine Patriots. It was science fictional reactions to war. So it was Sunshine Patriots and Joe Haldeman, Heinlein, and Le Guin, and me. And I was just like, whoa, because I'm just a self-published author. And then about 3 or 4 professors started teaching Coontown while I was still, peddling it on the street. So there I would be like, at a craft fair, and then all of a sudden I'd have to, jump on a plane and give a lecture about the book. And so I was sitting there thinking that I can't be the only person that experiences this, that you're not good enough for a publisher, but you're good enough for academia. I mean, it's a very weird situation to be in, because it's not how in our meritocratic society, this isn't how it's supposed to go. But I assumed that I wasn't the only person that this would happen to. And while this was happening, as I was saying, like I was doing comic book festivals, and I would meet these incredibly talented people, like John Jennings, which you see right there right now, who at the time wasn't being published, and I thought it was absolutely criminal. So that was sort of where the idea started bubbling in my head that there needs to be a place for people, who are in similar situations. And I kept just thinking about the power of narratives and like who controls it. And then the other thing was that through, Facebook and social media, I was seeing that the thing that I was told that I didn't exist as a Black science fiction writer, a spec fic writer, that all of a sudden I was seeing, through all these different groups and stuff, that there were brown folks all around the world reading science fiction and spec fic and writing it, and that we did exist and we existed in large numbers, and we were just being told that we didn't exist, but now we can finally see it. It was just like that narrative was breaking down. So so there was one thing that I really wanted to do was to capture this moment where there needed to be a testament to say like, oh, these people exist. And that was when that idea came about, where I was just like, okay, I need to start, if somebody needs to do it, I guess it's going to be me. And I do need to actually start a company to promote these people. So it's not, it wasn't about like diversity, because I'm not really a big believer in diversity, in that I believe that there's the world that is, and then there's diversity. And I always think that, talent is a fairly equally distributed commodity, if we're going to use that. So that if talent is your main criteria, that most spaces that you're involved in should actually inherently be diverse. So that if they're not, then there's something else going on there. So if we were going to be something that focused on talent, then we were going to be diverse. So there's no need to actually be a champion of it. And even though, I did win an Locus Award recently for amplifying marginalized voices, it wasn't for that either. It was more along the lines of that whole idea of the power of narrative, and who controls it, and that we should have the power to control our own narratives. And that's the only way that we could not only just change art, but change society in and of itself. And then it was just a matter of reclaiming spaces. I often joke that, usually, like, not when I have the flu and can, deliver my lines better, but I often joke that, white folks stole our spaces so long ago that they actually think that they're theirs, but these spaces are actually ours. And they've been ours for time immemorial, and it's time to just start reclaiming those. And that was basically the idea behind Rosarium, is to reclaim the spaces that have always rightfully been ours. So in doing that, the first thing that I wanted to do was, reclaim that whole idea of speculative fiction being for brown folks, that we've always been in those spaces, and that we've been excluded from the spaces that we created for ourselves. So that's how Mothership was born. Mothership, Tales from Afrofuturism and Beyond. Excuse me really quickly. And that was 10 years ago. And that was the whole idea, was that it was just focusing, that was focused basically on brown folks, so that either the author had to be brown or the main characters. So it was really crazy because I think that only one person, Nisi Shaw, actually knew who we were or knew who I was, because she read the arc of Sunshine Patriots back in 2004 or whatever, and somehow remembered my name. So it was kind of crazy. Ed and I were just begging everybody and hitting everybody up, and we just got really lucky. It was one of those things that mainstream publishing didn't think was important, but the people, the writers themselves actually thought were really important. So we got really lucky, you know, Juno Diaz, Victor Laval, N.K. Jemison, when she was on the come up, Tobias Bakel, S.P. Sumtow, Darius James, the late great Greg Tate, you know, they all, you know, donated pieces. And then we got really lucky in that, you know, some of the young up and comers, you know, like Carmen Maria Machado, Silvia Moreno Garcia, Daniel Jose Older, Tade Thompson, Sophia Samatar, like those folks have gone on to much bigger and better things. So it's really funny because a couple of years ago, NPR Books said that when you look at diversity in science fiction, there's that word again, that's been happening in the last few years, you know, it kind of starts with mothership. I mean, it really doesn't, but it is like a touchstone document for like the moment, like that this was what was about to come. And it's like things like that are what happens when you do start reclaiming spaces. Like you get the, you know, help set the tone for what is important. And on that side of things, you know, we've done things like, you know, Stories for Chip. Like we wanted to thank Samuel R. Delaney, you know, for being the literary father of Afrofuturism while he was still alive, right? Because we didn't get to do that for Octavia Butler. You know, we got to do APB, Artists Against Police Brutality, back in 2015, you know, just when Black Lives Matter was starting to come about. You know, these are things that even when they were released, you know, the mainstream reception wasn't necessarily all that receptive. But at the same time, you get to do the things that are important for you. You know, you get to do things like the Sea is Ours, you know, Steampunk Southeast Asia, or, you know, you get to publish things like The Hookah Girl, where, you know, Margot talks about growing up Palestinian Christian in America, or, you know, Ghost Stories, where, you know, Whit Taylor talks about dealing with her own sexual assault, and this was before Me Too. You know, you get to have people claim their spaces and tell the world what is important, and then the world gets to react, and then you get to empower yourselves and each other and all the world around you. And those are the kinds of things that we like to do. But, you know, we also, you know, we also like to expand in that we feel that we get to expand the palette or re-expand the palette of mainstream culture, because we can do things like, you know, Arc Dust, which is like radical Black queer science fiction. You know, it's just like, you know, Alex uses like the Black Panther 10-point program as a structure of a short story. You know, we get to do things like Tati Went West with Nikhil Singh, who's a South African writer, excuse me, where it's basically Alice in Wonderland meets third world dictatorships and space aliens. You know, we get to basically we're not looking to fill any kind of niche, because we're not looking at the world as a niche. We're looking at it as these spaces that are ours, and that anybody who is part of that space will ultimately find us and join in. So sometimes it is like an APB thing where it is an issue, right? Where these, you know, for that project, a lot of it was testimonials. It was very much a very personal side of what it's like to to deal with police, through shorts, through essays, through pinups, as you see here. It was people being unfiltered, basically, and telling their stories, right? Claiming their spaces, but, we get to just basically define ourselves. Like, one of the problems that a lot of marginalized voices go through is that in order to try to gain some sort of acceptance, is that they self-censor or they self-reject, or they're looking at their craft through the mediated white gaze. And it's not necessarily how do I feel about a certain thing, but how do I feel in a way that is palatable to the mediated white gaze. And for us, we wanted to lift that burden from folks. We want you to be closer to your artistic self and not have to worry about those kinds of things, so that you can explore, very deeply painful things, but you can also, have fun with stuff. Spooks here, right here is a very great example. It's a project coming up from Robert Love, which is basically just this group of detectives that explore Black conspiracy theories, like, is Tupac still alive, and things along those lines, or who killed Basquiat, things like that, which are just kind of fun. So we have, like, the entire spectrum is open to us. So we have fun projects like that, or Super Sick, which is an Indian secret agent trying to get to Graceland, but the Taliban and immigration keep getting in the way. Or, my own Bad Mothers, which is an all-female band of space pirates that double as a James Brown revival band, and excuse me, or even Mahendra Singh's American Candide, which is just taking Voltaire's Enlightenment novel and updating it and setting it in the present day US. So you have, Jesus and Jesus in alien museums, and all kinds of crazy immigration stories and all that stuff. The entire idea of, so I guess in a way, with like being an anti-diversity publisher of sorts, is that you end up with a wide kaleidoscope or a huge diversity of ideas and stuff, because the freedom is there, right? So as I said, like, if you're looking for the talent, and if you're looking for just creativity and great ideas, then you just are inherently diverse, right? So you're looking right here at Mother Christmas, which is a retelling of the St. Nicholas story, and it's set in ancient Greece. And the artist is Brazilian, and the writer is American, and we definitely span the globe, looking for folks and looking for talent. One of the projects that I did 5 years ago to celebrate our 5th anniversary was a project called Sunspot Jungle, which I don't know why I took it on myself, but I did. And it's a 2-volume set of 105 short stories from around the world, because I just wanted to show just how far-reaching speculative fiction has gotten. And I just wanted to show examples of just all the different things that people are doing from around the world. And that's like the constant quest, is to constantly look and scour all across the country and all across the world for all these different kinds of talents, because it's a fantastic time to be a fan of comics and speculative fiction, because there's so much of it being produced, and so much of value and of worth. We've haven't done too many translations because it's very hard to pull off, but we have been able to bring the Italian writer Clelia Ferris, and she's absolutely fantastic. This biopunk writer. That was our first translated work, and that was just kind of funny because it was basically Francesco Versa, who's an Italian publisher, hit us up one day wanting to translate Carlos Hernandez's Assimilated Cubans Guide to Quantum Santeria. And we just kind of realized that he's sort of like an Italian Rosarium. He does the same thing we do. And we just kind of collaborated on this book called Future Fiction, which was kind of a best of his company, which is called Future Fiction. And in that, we just had this short story by Clelia, and I was just like, my goodness, this woman is incredible. And I was talking to Rachel Cardasco, and she said, oh yeah, Clelia is fantastic. And I translate Italian. so let's just kind of put that together. And that was like, that's just kind of the way things have kind of happened. And so we put that out together, and I like doing that so much that I found a translator for Gabriele Damian Miravete for a book of short stories that we're coming out with in the fall. And then from Sunspot Jungle, I made a bunch of international connections. So 2 books that are coming out from those is Dilman Dilla's Where Rivers Go to Die, which is a book of short stories that are coming out. And then he's from Uganda. And then Subo's book Triangulum, he's Sri Lankan British. And that's just this absolutely fantastic space opera that reads like a high fantasy because it's so wrapped up in Indian mythology, and that the structure of the world is based that the conquerors set themselves up as gods. But it's heart-wrenching and just this absolutely fantastic book that will just tear out your heartstrings. So over the years, this is kind of the things that we've been doing. We'll bring you, issue-oriented, nonfiction, say, like APB. We would like to do more tributes to people that are important to us, like Stories for Chip. We do have other projects down the road that will fulfill that, just so that we can highlight people that have been important to us that aren't necessarily as important to the mainstream culture. But I think that it's very important that that we highlight and memorialize people who've contributed to society and to our various different cultures. And we've had issue-oriented fiction, sort of like the immigration dystopia like Sabrina Vorvulius's Ink. It's just a wide range of unpredictability and hopefully high quality. We've been fortunate enough to been in the New York Times a few times, many starred reviews. A lot of our stuff ends up in academia, and we just kind of keep going. Rosarium started as an idea. I didn't actually know what I was doing to be a book publisher. So it definitely had a lot more stumbles and mistakes than I even care to admit to. But we've been very fortunate that I've been able to outlast my mistakes and learn from them. And we just kind of keep going on and on and on. We've just been very fortunate. Yeah, that's another fun project. Susie Sampson. she's a retired middle-aged superhero who now has to get back into the game. Oh, thanks. So when you look at what we're doing, I would look at it as more as I said, it's sort of like the role of much of the small press is trying to just contribute in a very small way to mainstream culture, but also to be like a guiding force in where mainstream culture is going. So, I, like many of other small press folks, have had many of our artists, like John Jennings and Stacey Robinson and Damian Duffy, Whit Taylor, Maurice Broadus, like the list goes on, who go on to bigger and better things, and Carlos Hernandez, and who come back, Casey Shaw. Some of them come back, some of them don't. So like it's a very good template of where things are going. And it's a very good window into seeing like the utter possibilities of what the culture can bring, and what the culture has to offer. Like it's not just, and what comics and speculative fiction have to offer. It's not just what is out there like on our streaming services or movies or whatever, that we do tackle a lot of very complicated sociological issues and stuff. But mainly, what I look upon it as is, as I said, it's reclaiming these spaces, and in those spaces is a certain freedom that you don't necessarily get in a large homogenized corporate setting. Like we're not looking to see what audience that we can target or who can relate to this stuff, because we know that there are people out there who do relate to this. It's just a matter of them finding us and us finding them. And in that experiment, what we hope to do is, and in giving people those freedoms, is sort of giving a space, a gestational space, I guess you can say, in that freedom may ultimately one day just kind of birth new forms and new aesthetics, that there are new freedoms and new topics and new combinations and new models that people can follow by looking at Rosarium and looking at other places like that, and new things, new avenues and new ways of exploring not just American culture, or not just your specific group, but just that combination within that, because all these different combinations are mixing together in this one place called Rosarium. Because to me, one of the worst things that have happened to marginalized voices is being told that they weren't ghetto enough, right? And however that translates to whatever subset people think that you are, that there's this constant limitation because of whatever demographic the larger culture feels that they are, that they try to imprison you in. But so we need to stop ghettoizing creativity, or and whether that's in arts or business or just life in general, right? Like there's no such thing as not being ghetto enough. Or maybe another way of looking at it is to quote like one of my favorite songs from one of my favorite bands, War, is that the world is the ghetto, right? There's no like mainstream, because like the people who consider themselves mainstream and universal, if you look at the demographics, is a really small population, right? It's like maybe like 7% of the global population are the ones who consider themselves universal. So maybe it's just that all of this is just like one huge ghetto. And in that, and maybe Rosarium here is here to explore like the depths and the nuances of these ghettos, and to expose the horrors, and to celebrate the beauties of of this global ghetto that we live in. And out of that comes a certain beauty that you can only get if you're willing to explore that. And that's pretty much it. Sorry. Do people have questions? Excuse me. Sorry. As I said, I have the flu, but I hope I did all right.
No worries. Thank you so much. I just had to stop sharing the slides so I can see the questions. There are quite a few wonderful questions in the chat for you. So the first two questions are from Lily. Lily wants to know, how do you balance writing your own experience or worldview and writing others' experiences that may not be your own, but you want to include for very good reasons? And I'll read the second question in a bit for you.
Okay. I think, okay, so I think one of the really important things with being a writer, if that's what we're talking about, is being a really good listener. So the one assumption is that I always have is that I don't know anything. Even if I think I know, or even if I've hung around. So like the day the Klan came to town, right? The main character is Sicilian American, and I am not Sicilian. And like a lot of my friends were Italian American and everything. And so I knew a bunch of stuff, and I'm Catholic. So I knew a bunch of stuff, but there were so many things I just did not know. And I just went into it going like, I don't know anything. So I read so much about Italy, the Italian American experience, so the Sicilian language versus the Italian language. And then I asked a lot of people stuff. So by the time I'm done, like I actually, spoke at an Italian American academic conference about the Italian American diasporic experience, because like I just went in saying like, I don't know. So I think that that's pretty much the most important thing, is going in there, just being as humble as possible and saying like, I don't know. Even what I think I know, I don't know. And you got to realize that if it's not your story, you're going to miss details. So you just have to go in with hat in hand and approach it that way.
No, that was great to really emphasize the humility dimension of that. So Lily's second question, has your publishing house ever included disability as something that is covered or included in the work that it publishes? Lily says, I am currently reading and reviewing the Salvagers series by Alex White. And not only is it well-written, diverse science fiction, but there's a protagonist with a disability in it. And I've noticed that that's pretty rare. I have a disability, so I tend to focus pretty hard on that in all aspects of life.
I will admit that that is definitely a weakness. That is something that we haven't come across. It hasn't been something that I've actively recruited, but I don't actively recruit that much, nor do we take submissions that often. But it is definitely a weakness that I have been aware of for the past couple of years. But basically, like in the last couple of years when I kind of shut down because of the pandemic. So now that we're starting to ramp up, I think that is something that I will actively look more towards. But as I said, like we don't take open submissions just yet. But thanks for actually pointing that out, because that is something that bugs me about myself.
Thank you for that. So the next question is from Cindy. Cindy wants to know, Bill, can you speak to how libraries, librarians, and the systems that underpin them can advance/hinder the presses like Rosarium from reaching wider audiences?
Well, I mean, I will admit that, libraries have gotten better over the past couple of years. I think that I used to talk about advocate consumers um, as opposed to consumer advocates, where like small presses just need people to advocate for them more. So for the small press, like it's been, the hard thing is that to get libraries' attention, you need like star reviews from like, you know, one of the big threes. Now, Publishers Weekly has been pretty cool for us over the years. So we've had like 7, 8, I think. So that really helped. But like, we know that if like something doesn't get a star review, like it just won't be noticed. And like Library Journal hardly covers us, and Kirkus has never covered us. Even after 10 years, they're like, well, if you're an independent, I'm like, you know that I'm not a self-published person. Like, but you know, so I think like you're kind of missing out on something, because a lot of small presses are doing things that years later the mainstream presses act like they invented. So like if you're kind of looking to be more representative of the things that are going on, digging deeper is just the thing, because it's kind of hard for us to, you know, like as I said, like being wholly dependent on star reviews is like literally having to be extraordinary every time out.
Mm-hmm.
Or somebody getting, or the reviewer getting what you're trying to do.
Yeah, Bill, that was just what I was going to say. You know, the reviewer pool is a whole other conversation.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. Because I mean, there's stuff that hasn't gotten star reviews that get taught in universities that we have.
Yes, absolutely.
APB didn't get reviewed at all, but it's taught in universities quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Mothership, all that stuff. But you know, it won't be in the library if it doesn't get that star review. But it's not like it's not without quality, because oftentimes the reviewer has no idea what the hell we're talking about. And you know why?
I sure do.
Yes.
Sure do.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Our next
thank you.
Yeah, our next question is from Kevin. Kevin says, you spoke earlier about diversity versus the real world and how your worldwide search for the best authors naturally led to a diverse group of writers. What changes? Okay, sorry. What changes should the science fiction publishing industry make to reflect that same diversity? And how can libraries take advantage of that?
Yeah, I don't, you know, I literally don't know how, because it's such a homogenous field, right? And the thing is, it's a homogenous field with very limited experience that thinks that they know everything. So you can't tell people who think that they know everything that they don't know everything. And you know, it's a very powerful thing, right? And it's a very different, and it's a way of changing stuff. You know, the demographics of this country. Yeah, like, I mean, I think brown folks are up to like 11% now of published authors in this country. And it's about to be a majority brown country in what, like 5, 7 years? Like, yeah, I don't know how you're going to change if everybody's been telling you to change for 50 years and you ain't changed. Like, you clearly don't want to. So I don't know what to tell you. Like, I'm just going to do me and not worry about them. Does that make sense, Kev? Yeah.
Yeah. Just a quick follow-up, just with the last thing you said about you're going to do you. This idea of us having to be, and by us, I mean perhaps people of color, those who are marginalized, having to be subversive in different ways, you know, to get our points across, to get our stories out, not to mention protecting ourselves, protecting our stories, protecting our experiences, etc.
Yeah. I mean, that is a thing. I mean, it's sort of like, you know, I mean, I just got kind of to a point where I'm like, wow, you made me think that I sucked. And then I realized, then, you know, I'm thinking I'm like a really horrible writer, and like people are writing, they're teaching me in universities and they're writing papers about me. So it's not me. So like I went through and I got through the other side, because like I literally threw away every short story I ever wrote. So I'm on the other side of it. So like now I'm just like, I'm just gonna do this. So it was not a fun journey.
Yeah.
So I don't know how other people do it, you know?
And it's like what you described, the gaslighting is real.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not, I mean, and it's, you don't realize the venom of it
Mm,
until you're on the other side of it. So
mhm,
then you just kind of like, you're not interested anymore.
mm,
So for me, I'm just not interested anymore. Like I find, I find my tribe, and I find my tribe comes in all shapes and sizes and all kinds of different things. And we find each other, and then we try to help each other out, right?
mm.
And that's just how, and it just keeps growing. Like I, we're internationally distributed, but there's a flea market that I do just outside of the Capitol, because I'm here in DC, just like a few blocks from the Capitol, because it's like literally the world comes there, and it like gives me life, because it's just like all these people, all shapes and sizes, come to like Rosarium and go like, oh shit, like what is this? Thank you.
Mhm,
I mean, I've had like grown people cry,
mm.
and you're like, okay, that's a little much,
All right.
but like, because it's just like, yeah, that's what you want. So you're like, that's the thing that I worry. I'm looking for that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do this for that,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and then hopefully help those artists that are on that side to come to the other side,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know, and just yet again, grow that space that has always been ours.
Yes. Love it. Love it. All right. We have a question from Heather. And
Okay.
Heather says, the advent of Rosarium publishing is such an adventure and success story. Will you ever write a book about that? I'll bet the authors who have found a home for their voices would love to contribute.
No. No.
Okay.
I don't have any interest in I don't have any interest in my life. I don't know what that means,
Um,
but no, I don't. That's not me.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
not me.
Okay.
But somebody else can after I'm dead.
I was just, well, let's not go there, but we'll say let Heather and the others can help us spread the word about Bill's story.
Well, I'm gonna say if anybody writes about it when I'm alive, I'm just gonna go lies, damn lies, even if it's all true, because I'm that guy. Go ahead.
Jonathan Melman says, no question, just hi, Bill.
Hey, John, go Pens. Go ahead.
All right, so we have a few more minutes if anyone has any additional questions for Bill. And please go check out, Bill, can you tell the folks your website, and we will certainly put that up when we put the recording up so they can check out all of the titles you talked about today.
Okay, it's just rosariumpublishing.com.
Mhm.
Yeah, I named it after my daughter. My daughter's named after Rosa Parks and Zora Neale Hurston. So her name is Rosa Neale. This is Rosarium Publishing.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, if there are no further questions, please join me in thanking Bill. Fascinating talk, really provocative. Thank you so much for your time and expertise. Grateful to have you, and grateful to have you as part of the series.
Thank you so much. I
Yeah,
really appreciate it.
yeah, you're getting love in the chat, so thank you.
Cool.
And folks, before you leave, just thank you all for attending our spring series. I see some, repeat names. We're always grateful to have you. Our next big event will be the 4th annual Augusta Baker Lecture on April 21st, featuring children's book author and young adult author Renee Watson. So the lecture will be in person, but we are hatching a plan for a live stream, so please stay tuned. All right, thank you all so much. Thank you, Bill, again. Be well and have a good weekend, and glad to see you.
Thank you. You have a good one.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.